Greetings, traveler. How's the weather outside today? Wonderful, I imagine. And isn't that a wonderful thing? To be without complaints? I think it is something worth celebrating. I should know. I used to always complain about how my son would wander off pointlessly without direction. Now that I wander in his stead, I see my folly. For the only way to find yourself is to lose yourself. I don't think my parents realized the implications. Lust for life and lust for adventure, they thought. It's a good thing I didn't become a maid, or else some noble might get the wrong idea. It's difficult to choose, considering how much there is to love. I love trekking through the Pale, lapping my tail against beds of fresh snow. I love scaling the mountains of the Reach and looking down on the rivers and fords that give life to Lorcan's bones. I made the pilgrimage up the 7,000 steps and watched the sun as it drifted into sea, glazing the sky in layers of magma. I traversed through the fall forest and watched the opera of leaves as they were led across the stage by the autumn wind. And when I look upon it all, I feel nothing but warmth, even when people insist it's so cold. Skyrim was the one place my son had never been, which makes it all the more magical that we can see it together. It would likely be too much of a burden, given how old and frail I am, but I appreciate the concern. Besides, if you were a bandit clan, who would you consider a more appealing target? A sweet old farmer, or a single soldier dressed in iron? Such is how the beasts of the wild operate. They target the young, even when it draws the ire of the mother. But who will serve as the matron of this old Argonian? Maybe a dragon will mistake me for its hatchling. Certainly hope not. I don't want to spend my last days in a nest, subsisting on a diet of regurgitated goat parts. My son was right. There really are fates worse than death. I was a cynic and a pessimist. But most of all, I was a coward. I would wipe the counters clean 4 times a day and overcook the food because I feared the meat had parasites. I slept with a candle burning and never left my hut at night and dared not brave the rain. I made oceans out of ponds and mountains out of anthills. I was afraid to live because I was scared to die. I let the fear consume me because I didn't want to ever again feel the pain of being left behind. I lost my husband to the Great War. It was so long ago, I forget which side he was on. As if that makes a difference. War makes widows of us all. I once only thought of my own grief, but now I hold dear the time we shared together. I still remember the worry on his face when our son was hatched. It was so beautiful. Yeah, I think I had to give him a bit of wine to calm him down. As in, 3 flagons. That night, I think he slopped off more scales than there are coins in the Emperor's treasury. He was a gallant Argonian, with horns that were as statuesque as a castle, and scales as brilliant as a gemstone. Oh, I'm sure mothers say that about their children regardless. But the clan girls adored him too. Yet for all his stature and bravery, I feared for his safety. Whenever he left on one of his adventures, I implored him to visit the library in Thorn so that he could borrow one of the travel guides on the Empire. He would pat me on the shoulder and laugh. It was a voice so full of energy that it shook my tail. But a pat so gentle could have been a child's. And that's what he'd always be to me. A child. My child. I would worry that without the guide, he'd wander off to some place dangerous or get lost in the wilderness. But I realize now it wasn't where he was going that bothered me. I just didn't want him to go. Yeah, although my son never pulled away, never ran off in the middle of the night. When he felt the urge to wander, he always told me when. He let me holler and scream, and when I had exhausted all my energy, he gave me a kiss and said goodbye, knowing it could have been his last. I was so caught up in the anger over him leaving, I looked past what it really meant. Should he fail to return? My son, though, he could always see forward, even when all I wanted was to go back to the way things were. Whenever we open our eyes and see something, it takes a fraction of a second to register in our minds and understand what we're seeing. That's our destiny as mortals. To always look at the past. To always be a fraction of a second behind. They say hounds, on the other hand, can smell things leagues away. They know when a visitor is coming, or if fresh game lies hidden behind the brush. Hounds are always looking at the future. My son was very much the same. While I could think only of the past, he knew this day would come, so he never worried about whether he left on good terms or bad. He knew that we'd find common ground in the end. May you lose your way and find adventure.